Good afternoon, good morning, based upon where you're located. This is Stuart Blumenthal with ETHOSystems. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds here. We got a couple last people joining, it says waiting for their name, so we'll give it about 30 seconds here. Awesome. I think we got everyone into the system. So I want to welcome everyone this morning and this afternoon to our continuing education series that we do here at ETHOSystems. Today we have the awesome presenter of Sue Walworth, who's going to be going over working smarter within Sage Intacct. So some of the people on the call have been using Intacct for a while. Some people are new to the system, and our goal today is to make this a little bit easier for you to navigate around and get through the system without and just optimize your time, because you should be more efficient in your daily use of Intacct. So if you hit the next slide for me here. So just a quick couple logistics before I turn it over to her. This presentation is about 30 minutes. All the phone lines are muted. Sorry about that. That's what happens with the webinar. So if you have any questions, please use the questions feature within the GoToWebinar. We are recording this. We're recording this, but I will be monitoring that, so we're all set there. And then last but not least, if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, just send me your email address in the chat in the questions, and I'll be happy to send you a copy of the PowerPoint. Couple upcoming things before I turn it over to Sue. In 29 days, I'm not counting it, Intacct will be releasing the R2 release. We're really excited about this. Some great changes to the construction module, the way that it handles contracts, AIA billing, things like that. They created some really cool stuff. We've got 2 upcoming webinars for ourselves. On the May 12th, we'll be doing ACH processing, and then on the 9th of June, we'll be talking about sales tax. We will probably throw in an additional webinar between those 2 on the new features within Sage Intacct, but those are the 2 ones that are scheduled right now. With that, I want to turn it over to Sue. Sue, just for an introduction, is one of our senior consultants here. She's been an end user of Sage Intacct before she joined here, so she was in everyone's position before, trying to use the software and figure it out and make it work for her. So her combination of being an end user and a consultant really justifies why she's doing this presentation today. And Sue, I'm going to turn it over to you and put myself on mute.
Excellent. Thank you, Stuart. Hi, everyone. So again, Sue Walworth, Senior Sage Intacct Certified Implementation Specialist and Consultant here with ETHOSystems. And as mentioned, my goal is to find somewhere for each of you that you're just going to save a couple minutes, even if it's a couple of minutes once or twice a day. We all know that adds up. And I have found for myself some of these little tricks I don't take advantage of if I don't stop and think about it. So the point is just to make these forefront in your mind. Maybe the next time you see it, you run into a hiccup, you'll look, find 5 minutes somewhere, and that's 5 minutes more you can have to either enjoy your day or not be working in front of the computer. And that's the ultimate goal, is to save you time and effort and have you enjoy your experience with Intacct that much more. So what I did was I tried to break today up into kind of 2 sections, one being what I view as true workspace customization. So things you can do to make your workspace look different and to be more efficient when maneuvering within. And we will walk through all of these, but very briefly, we'll talk about preferences, which very, very powerful, although not used as much as I would anticipate by some people. And I think we can probably find some time savings for each one of you in there. Just duplicating your windows, the ability of Intacct to have multiple windows open, especially in these days when we often have more than one monitor. So you can keep things open on your other screens and continue working away without causing system issues, and hopefully, again, save some time. Dragging and dropping, using carrots. resizing your screen, the bookmarks and favorite features within Intacct, and then we'll briefly touch on list views and dashboards. And both list views and dashboards, we do have blogs out there on the ETHOSystems website that I think are great. They're short and sweet and easy to access. And if anybody wants that link, I know Stuart's more than happy to provide that, but that's something that I honestly personally go back and forward with every couple of days, just kind of see what's out there. So again, these are meant to help you in the actual workspace of when you look at your monitor or monitors, what do you see? And then a couple of other reminders regarding other ways that you may be able to save some time when you're maneuvering or even learning new things in Intacct that we don't always think of. You know, using things on your home screen, your report center, using and revisiting your resources. Honestly, again, even as a consultant with 4 releases a year, there are constantly changes happening, and I always find something really cool on each change. So revisiting your resources, not hesitating to click on that, take a look. Your copy and paste ability within Intacct, so where you can take something and cut and paste it from Excel or from Word and not have to retype. We have a blog out there on our website, again, of other shortcuts, keys, and keystrokes to make your entry more efficient. Some people love using their keyboard rather than their mouse, and these are some different options on ways to do that. Resizing your screen, looking for blue characters within Intacct which indicate drill downs, using search functions. Again, using the resources you have out there in the question marks you see on the screens. And then one of the biggest ones is simply share with your team, your coworkers, your Intacct resources in and outside of the house. Sharing, sending quick emails. This is a great way to do something. Sometimes we don't realize how much time we can save one of our team members, and I love doing that as well. We've got a great team, and we've got great clients who do that as well. So the first thing I'm going to drill into or talk about will be the preferences. So I will manipulate over to my demo environment. And in my demo environment, unlike I believe everybody now, we have it set up as a multi-entity instance. So you will have a top level and you will have potentially other levels within. If I'm at my top level, and I will actually show you the home screen tricks and the caret tricks. So when I say use carets on one of my notes, I'm talking about literally just using your ability to make your screen smaller and drill right at what you need. So you'll see various screens will have this. I don't always think to do it, but drilling in and using your home screen to get to your most recent entity or where you may have been most recently in the system. You've got nice, easy options to connect. From your home screen, you can get to your applications instead of going through your pull-down menus. You've got immediate connections to other resources. So you've got your Intacct Help, your community, which if anyone on this team is not yet a member of, that's a super powerful resource as well that connects Intacct users from all angles of use and of the world and modules. So you may have some people who do not use construction, some do, but you will get that whole population and the ability to ask questions of other users. Visiting your resource notes, templates, checks, and supplies. So again, don't hesitate to look at resources or links that may be already in your system. For the preferences, you're just simply going to go to your name and then click on your preferences. And here's where I'm going to hide some things because again, I'm not going to necessarily go into detail. These will be familiar. Your security preferences. One thing I do want to mention is I know I have a personal preference as far as my timeout. So as long as you do not try and exceed your company's current settings for timeout, you can make these a little shorter or longer depending on your preference, but I like to do this. I like to tweak mine down. My inactivity, I typically bump it down to 2 or 3 hours because obviously if I'm not inactive, there's no reason to leave it open. But just things to be aware of that you can tweak your timeout preferences, your duration sign out, and your inactivity duration sign out, as long as you stay within the confines of your company settings or your administration settings. So I will hide those. If you need to change your password, you can always go directly into, again, your preferences to access your password and change it. And again, you can see your security question there, which now I will change mine after this meeting. I would make sure you have, once you have your Learning Center access, go ahead and connect it here so you can easily get into your question and answer area. But I'm going to hide that. And lastly, if you want, now some companies do use approval flows, some do not, but you've got the ability to specify what you receive emails on. So the first thing is you can set your signature. And one of my comments in here was use your question mark, which is anywhere you see this wonderful little character means you can grab information very quickly without going to another screen. And I feel like this is super powerful, especially if there's any question in your mind what might happen when you enact that change. Don't hesitate to click on that. It's super easy to do and grab in and out. But here I can set email notifications for my reports. If I were a purchasing approver, I could ask for emails to come to me through here, through my preferences, payment requests, bills, journal entries. Again, just things that you can tweak to make your life easier as a user, depending on how you use the system. On-screen messages is something that I think is really helpful for me where I do have multiple windows open at any given time. So I pulled in a couple of the different error messages so that I wouldn't have everybody here have to wait while I go through. But what you can do is you can ensure that no matter what screen you're in, if you're coming close to your inactivity timeout, this will pop up no matter where you are. So I just grabbed an example of this so that, for instance, I get pulled away, I'm in Outlook, I'm doing something, and I'm about to time out and lose something I'm working on. I absolutely want Intacct to let me know, hey, you need to go and do something to make sure you don't get logged out. I can show you the leave site and the delete. Those are more interactive, so when you're actually leaving a screen, these two may pop up. And again, you can set those or not set those depending on your preference. But for instance, here, if I were to try, and I'm going to go to another window, we'll just grab another entity. And let's say I'm creating a bill and I start entering and I'm getting ready to close my screen. This is my warning saying that I have made changes and they may be lost if I do not save. So that's one of these error messages that you can have come up by using, and of course, again, it's not going to let me leave until I answer that. So by selecting your warn on unsaved changes, that will bring up the error message I just saw trying to leave a screen. So again, another nice little reminder you may or may not like, totally personal. Warn on delete is very similar in that if I pulled up a listing of the bills and I went in and I just was prepping to delete something. So a place where this actually might be more frequently used is if you're trying to delete several records. So if I'm going in and let's see how I've got this set. I pulled up a bad example, but I will pull up a little different example. I'm going to go to a purchasing transaction. And let's see if I go here. So if I'm trying to click on my delete here and then confirm it with a delete, I now get a warning message and it tells me how many I am trying to delete. So if you have a long list row here or a long row of items that you're trying to delete and you are just selecting all, I use it as a visual cue, for instance, and you will see with some of the list views we can tweak in a moment, it will indicate how many are there. So if you have a screen of 100 and you've selected 8, it's a quick way to verify that you've selected as many as you anticipate. Again, just another visual reminder that you can turn on or off, but I find it helpful to be able to confirm, especially with the delete functionality. The display validation message on a separate screen is more of a personal preference. I really don't use that much, but you can play with that and see if you prefer that setting. So again, certain things you can do that may not be set up in your corporate settings that you as a user can choose to utilize to ensure you're acting the way you want. Probably one of the fun things that you can do is you can change your appearance. And when I say that, I mean the appearance as it relates to this bar right across the top, and then the color of this. So if you look at my entity that I opened, right now I have them both the same color. And I can tell you honestly, I could be in either one and I don't have that quick visual, and it's very feasible that I may be entering into the wrong screen without realizing it. So what I like to do is change my colors so that it's very clear to me which entity I'm working in. So I just changed my top level to be green, or lime green, I guess you would call it. And you can see that now if I'm looking at my my windows, I have my visual cue that this is my top level, and then this is my entity level. If you wish to change the color of your entity level, just a heads up that you would need to go into that level and go into your preferences in that screen. So you would just go within, you would end up going again to your same place, and I'm going to use my little carrots to close this stuff up and save myself a moment. And then you can change that and you can make it custom, whatever, whatever you like, but something that may help your eyes just easily know as you go from monitor to monitor. And as soon as you click save, it will make that adjustment. There we go. So close these back up. The other thing about personalization is that you can choose which start page you like. Again, depending on your day-to-day activities, you may want to go straight into your general ledger if you are working from that most days, or your dashboard. You've got the option to put anything you want in there as your start page. So instead of doing your drill down or going to your home page, you would come to that page. You also have the ability in the preferences to work with your dashboards. And again, mentioning there's a great little demo on our website on the dashboards. Super powerful, easy for a user to do themselves if they have reports that they drill into, or certain things that they want to see that may not be applicable for their team members. Absolutely play with it. Enjoy it. Again, make it your own, make it something that, it can have your links to your weather as well as maybe outside reports and your company website. So again, things that are powerful that lead you from having to go to other locations. But what this would do is the next time I log in, it is going to go to that dashboard for me. So I'm then back up and I'm able to start right into where I need to be. And back into our preferences. Oops, let me bring that back down.
So
The
one
other thing,
question came up is,
yes,
can you set the preferences for other users in the organization? Is there a way of doing that? Or is that all?
that would be done at the admin level for the company as a whole. So your company would do that in their configuration tab for each, for the company. You can drag and drop your order, but this would be your personal preferences.
Great.
Okay. And that's what gives you the flexibility to say, you know what, I want to use the default order that my company has set, which will set it all the way back to what the company has, or you can use your own. And you can be flexible about going back and forth as well, depending on your day-to-day activity. So what you can do within these menus, you could do it from here, or you can kind of do it live, but this will give you a more permanent. You can drag and drop to be any order you want. So if your day-to-day again is that you're working from the general ledger and it makes more sense for you to be, to the GL, AR, AP, you go ahead and you can save that. And then always make sure you refresh when you do something like that. But you can now see, here's my general ledger, my AR, my AP at the top of my order. So while it may not seem that big, saving, searching through this 5 times a day, that could actually end up to be a good time savings for a lot of us. So those are the biggest ones on that. Now, page defaults, I took a little bit of time because these are confusing to me, honestly, when I look at it. And what I wanted to do is provide you with an example of what each of these means. And on my day-to-day, I am often changing these on the fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down into my detail or into my entity level. I'm just going to go to my AP bills. So I've set these to be the same. So if I look at my records per page, let me show you on here. We did the preferences. So the records per page is any list view that you go into, and it has to do with how many screens you will end up ultimately seeing. For instance, here I have 72 records, but it ends up being 4 screens. So what that is for me is if I look at this, I've got 4 pages of activity, and say I know I just need to work with maybe the Z's of something, and I don't want to see all of my records. I can use my ability to sort and resort, my little arrows here, and then just go from the reverse of the alphabet, knowing I'm just going into this first section. I just want to go into a little bit of it. I don't need all 4 pages. I don't need to be scrolling through everything. So if I were to change that, and this again is a common one that I will be changing, throughout a process as I go into different functions. I mean, this can be, you could make this massive. And now if I go into my AP bills, now you can see all 70 show as 1 page, and this would show all the way up to 999 records. Other things where that might be helpful if you're doing exports for some reason, or if you're doing copies and pastes. So sometimes I know copying and pasting in Excel is a pain, but you can just literally do it this way and manage kind of what you're looking at by adjusting this, and then not have to, again, go through page by page 4 times just to get through 70 records. So I will turn that back just to keep that manageable. The other thing to note when you do change these page defaults is there is going to be a load time associated with that in the background. So if you have a ton of activity or a ton of records, you may see a bit of a slowdown in the page loading when you have these selected as larger numbers. So depending on what your need is and your timing, you may wish to keep these more concise or at the smaller limit. Now the items per page, if we look at this, is your selection list pop-ups. So this means if you have an issue or an issue finding a vendor name, for instance. So I'm in here, I am going to be entering an AP bill, and let's just say I'm going to an entirely new bill. And I'm down here and I want to look at my projects. And I click and I'm like, oh goodness, I don't know which one that is. Your selection list is going to control how many records pop in this segment. So in this case, 20 for me holds everything. But if you had hundreds of projects, you may want to have a larger selection list. So if I was searching for SW in here, that's fine because they all show on page 1. Again, just things to keep in mind. I would not have to page through if I wanted to find something different. Cost codes are going to be a little different. And let me go to accounts, because this is a larger, right? So if we have 121 accounts and I'm going to be visually looking for something, it may be simpler for me not to have all these separate pages here. And then to affect that, I would simply go back in and adjust my preferences. So that is going to be your items per page, or your selection list pop-up items. Drop-downs are your true drop-down listings. So in this case, again, if I'm adding a bill, this is going to be how many records are going to show right here. So how many show here? Same thing. Again, so if you've got a ton of projects or a ton of accounts, you may want this to be expanded, so you can use your Control F to do your search, right? So again, just a reminder, you can kind of limit or expand upon what you see here, just knowing it might take a little longer when you click on open if you've got a limit of 999. Okay. Get back in there. And this is why I kept saying carrots, because for me, it's so much simpler just to hide this stuff rather than scrolling around. Oops, but I hid one too many. So we've talked about records per page. Let me change that back, which I didn't save that. We've talked about items per page. So when you have it and you can't find what you want in a list and you're going to click on that find to expand, how many options do you see? Drop down items per drop down is the actual mouse click into a dimension. How many options are you going to see right on that screen? And then we go into your transaction rows. So in that instance, if I am creating a bill and I say I want 2 transaction rows, that's what's showing here, 1 and 2. So that limits, again, what you see. It would do this same behavior whether you were going into a new bill, a new general ledger entry, any type of transaction. It's going to give you 2 lines to start with, and then from there on, you would have to click your plus sign to add in additional lines. So again, it might flex depending on your need for a given day or a given task. If you're entering 10 lines per item, you may just want to go ahead and cut and paste everything in that way. And you see I keep getting that confirmed, which actually I prefer, but you can turn that off if that drives you nuts. And then we also have transaction table rows per page. And this is just a squeak different from what we were just talking about, in that if I were creating a bill and I were starting to enter and I've entered in all my information, and then guess what? Oh, I have more than the number of lines I anticipated having. So the minute I get to a certain point, so the minute I get past that, you can see I'm just adding row after row here. It will get to a point where it will tell me it's going to put it on an additional page. So the minute you see page here or you see page here, that means you've exceeded your setting and your preferences for the number of rows that you're going to show, and you would need to go to the next page. The place where I find this to be helpful is when I am looking at a completed item and I am doing a manual copy and paste, meaning that I very often find that I will do a copy and paste just by highlighting the whole thing and then cutting and pasting it into Excel. But if I have 2 pages, now I have to do that twice. So if I'm in an instance where I'm taking that data and I want to play around with it, and I know I'm going to have 80 records on an entry transaction table, then I will go and change my preferences to save some time when I'm doing that. So those are the different types of screens and pop-up lists that you can affect using those settings. Drop down being, again, we talked how many lines you're going to see, how many options, and then the transaction rows and the transaction tables. So how quickly you do or do not expand into your next page of data. And then there are some preferences within here that I don't know people use as often, but I do have some friends. I'm a true accounting geek, and some of my friends like to have it, for instance, insert the decimal point for them. So Intacct allows you the flexibility to change that so that you, if you're doing a massive amount of data entry and you're not doing it by import template, this will allow you to actually go ahead and just stop worrying about the decimal and move about your keying that much faster. Type ahead suggestions would be very similar to any other program where it's going to try and pre-fill for you. The all line item fields per line item, Intacct recommends that you don't do this, because what this does is it's going to show you every option, and you can see I do not have it selected, but it shows you every option for something that you could fill out related to that type of transaction. So say we're putting in an AP line item and you have all 11 dimensions active in your environment. This would show you all 11 dimensions, and you may not want that. You may want it to truly be what your admin or your team members have created as your entry layout in the bills. So you may just want it to truly be limited, but if you select that option, this will expand. You will not have this little envelope to hide it, and these 4 would now appear up in your matrix, and you would be looking at a much smaller or difficult to view screen. Okay. The Enter tab, again, just a complete preference. You can change within Intacct if you're used to using your Enter key. You know, just again, a preference between the team members, just as fast. If you have your thing, I'd say go for it. Feel free to change it back and forth too and see what you're most comfortable with. You know, whether you use the adding machine type, and yes, I'm dating myself, but if you use the section of your keyboard that looks like an adding machine, the enter button may be different for you. It may make more sense to use that to enter between your fields rather than the normal tab, which you would use on your QWERTY component of the keyboard. And then your quick view has to do with what you were just seeing my screen do here or not do, and you can play around with this again. But right now I have to click in to see this. You can have it set so that when you can play with this, but you don't have to have this open up for you when you click into a line item. And those again are going to be user preference and probably task preference. So just options to be aware of depending on what you're playing with for the day. So then the other things that I just kind of wanted to revisit, and I know these are things that we probably all know, but maybe we don't think about in terms of actually saving ourselves time when we're in a defined task. Duplicating your windows, the right mouse click, the duplicate. With Intacct, you do have the power to have duplicate windows open. So I would say please feel free, especially if you are looking back and forth. Maybe you're referencing a bill on one page and you're looking at a report on the other. So feel free to open your windows. The one caveat that I would share is when you update something in one window, just remember to refresh when you move back into another one, as it might take a few moments to reflect. So actually, we've gotten through most of those. Dragging and dropping your menu order can happen live, so you don't need to do that in your preferences. You can also do a certain amount of it in here. My understanding is that that would clear out, though, the next time you enter the system. So if you want it to hold, I would suggest putting it in your preferences instead. The carrots was what I had mentioned on the screen. And actually, again, the good example is here in my preferences screen. Is just being able to maneuver much faster and get to what I need without having to kind of wade down through everything. Of course, the other thing in here that I use a ton of the time is if I'm in a configuration or another menu where I'm not familiar with it, Control F. It works just like in any other Windows screen. It will help you locate things really quickly. And that works in drop-down lists and that sort of thing. Resizing your screen. You guys may laugh at this, but again, when I'm doing an entry and I'm doing a massive amount of entry, I have found that if I have clicks that I am completing over and over and over again, so say I am entering a bill and I know all that I need to enter is going to be a handful of lines and then I need to click post anew, I will often squeeze my menu into a more narrow space like I just did, so that I know I'm clicking here, I'm clicking here, and then I'm going straight up. And so that I can kind of just literally smooth out my workflow and save just a couple of seconds every screen. It adds up when you're doing tens or hundreds of transactions. The other thing about resizing your screen is just using your control key and your mouse scroll button to resize as you would within Windows normally, to give you either more or less viewing on a screen. So those are easy ways just to manipulate it. Heads up, if you're in the envelope and you need to move quickly between lines, I did forget to mention this, you've got your next row or previous row functions that you can kind of quickly move through.
And so I would like to make sure you add on that. You could always change the, in the details, you can always choose what's in the detail and what's in the header area. Great.
Yes, yes. So as long as you have the appropriate permissions within Intacct, what you can do is you can affect the entry's layout. So usually we have one team member within each instance that will do this because it will apply for all users, but absolutely, if you're in a transaction where you do not need to populate cost code and cost type every time, move it out. Have your team member create a slightly different entries layout for you that moves that. And then your team, again, has less, it's a little finicky with dragging and dropping, but, or if you move it to the end, again, things that you don't need to touch, put the order in to save yourself time. Affect your entry versus tab to ensure that you're moving as quickly as you can through things, and then save your layout. And then this would appear for anybody who now goes into this entity within that company and that transaction type. Bookmarks and starring your favorite menus within Intacct. So Intacct is super powerful in that I can take any screen and my little bookmark indicator, I can bookmark this page. I can call it what makes sense to me, which may be just AP bill entry. And then now I have my bookmarks over on the right-hand side of the screen. I could delete them or edit them on the fly. The other option is to star your favorites. So when you're in any one of these pull-down menus, if you hover over something that can be set as a favorite, you're going to see your little star. Once you hit that, you see it turned orange. I'll make it a little bigger, yellowy orange. And then this now holds that. And then you can move those around to simplify your workspace. So if you're working in a very restricted subset of your menu, you can create it that way, or you can even then say, I just want to see my favorites within GL or within my AP. So just again, to save yourself time moving from segment to segment, bookmarks or favorites are super powerful and very easy to do and manipulate. Look for the blue characters. Honestly, I love this about Intacct. So if I'm looking at anything, so let's say I look at a bill, I'll show you a couple different places, but you've noticed that edit is in blue, view is in blue, and print is in blue. Anything in blue indicates there's some functionality or something you could drill into from there. So if I were in viewing this bill, again, you can see I've got sections that are blue, and I can click on these to get to a different section within the system. So I can view the vendor information by clicking on the vendor. I could go into that invoice, which in this case would be associated with the retainage bill I'm looking at. So again, you don't have to open the system, open another page if you're just kind of going back and forth. You would just exit out by clicking on done. And even more powerfully, when you are in your general ledger reporting, you will see what you could drill down into. So as this is a demo environment, it's not going to be the most exciting general ledger, but I can be looking at this and I can drill right into the transaction from here because it's blue. Additionally, when you are writing interactive custom reports and on certain custom reports as well, so those two different report writer types, you can allow drill down functionality. So just ensure that when you're kind of speccing out the reports that you want, you indicate to the person writing those, whether it's your team member or your Intacct consultant, that you would love to be able to drill down on that. And as long as it's possible, they can write that functionality in for you so that your team can be right there and get easily into the detail behind what they're working with. And this happens in every area. So if I'm looking at a contract, again, if I'm looking at one of these, I can get into my project from here. I can get into my item detail from here. I can get to a billing template. So you can get a lot of places without having to activate the pull down menu or activate your favorites just by clicking on anything in blue. List views, I won't go too deeply into. We did do, I believe, a webinar on that. But again, knowing that every person is likely to have their own preferences, their own way of doing things, maybe their own subset of locations they want to see. So actually, I'm just going to go to the true bills list. You can create, I don't think I've ever seen this limit out, to be honest with you. You can continue to create views for yourself or for your team with all different kinds of slices and dices. You can pull in any header information. You can sort. You can put your columns in a different order. You can, write in some fancy filters. There's a lot of things that you can do so that once you have gone into your view, so if I go here and I save SW sample 3, for instance, the next time I go into my bills, it holds that view for me. So it's going to hold you as a user the last view that you utilized. So kind of steps you right into where you left off last time. And dashboards. Again, I could probably preaching to the choir, but there's so much that you can do with that you can make completely personal. I think, Stuart, if you're willing to share the blog that we have on that, ask your Intacct specialist to play with it. Go ahead and always feel free to go to your help and support. So you could go, help on this page and say, you know what, I really don't want help on this page. I want help on my dashboards, and pull up the most recent information. Remembering that with 4 releases a year, there may be things that have changed in the past 3 months. So this is the most effective way to get to the updated information about each of these areas, because this will include any change information within. And then you can close that. The other thing I like to do from the homepage is, again, you can get to your help. You can go to your community and your release notes. This right here, we will be having, obviously, we will be getting notification from Intacct with the next release coming out in a couple of weeks. But you can also kind of, here, between releases, they do change things. So taking a few minutes to kind of take a quick spin through here, maybe once a week even, and saying, I work with AP every day, let me see what they did. So just kind of keeping yourself up to date on everything that's happening, and any new tricks or tips, you'll be able to see them at the forefront, so right when they happen. And then these are going to be very familiar. So I mentioned using the home screen, so using those resources. So number 3 and number 1, using your report center. I haven't seen this as much as I would expect, but when you go into your reports, this component is a true report center that's going to kind of hold for you a lot of key information. So I can set my favorites and star them, and then easily access those reports over here on the favorites. And then I can further define that by application. So maybe I just wanted my favorite general ledger reports. Well, I haven't added any, but I can certainly create for myself a very quick list and quick way to access these reports. Memorized and scheduling. Any report that can be memorized, my understanding is we can also schedule that. So it's very common to see things like maybe daily cash receipts reporting coming out to the team who manages the cash forecast. Or maybe you have a certain account that you're trying to watch and you want to have a report sent to you each night of new transactions rather than having an email generated. So there are a lot of different things you can do within here that access through the report center. Ask the questions. Feel free to go to your help and support on this page. Custom reports, my reports, another way to slice and dice without having to go in and say, oh, which kind of report was that? I don't remember. Was it a financial or was it an ICRW? This will provide you with a little sheet to get into there. So we've talked about the resources, copying and pasting. So just within, as within elsewhere, if you're in Intacct and you're entering something, you can absolutely use, let's see, we're going to go all the way into a JE. Let's say I'm adding a general journal, cut, paste. All you can, save yourself from typing, right? If it's, you can see here, it's asking me why are you trying to put that in that, it's not allowed, and it will ask you. So again, just saving time wherever you can. It will still do its sanity checks on you before it lets you enter. We talked about resizing the screen and the Control F being the, the Windows find functionality. Shortcut keys and keystrokes, we have a list out there on the Ethos website of ways to kind of manipulate and open and close windows or open and close list views. use, like when you're on a date function, some of the ones I use every day for a date, if you type a T, it assigns it with today. If you hit the plus sign, it adds a day. The minus sign takes away a day. Trying to think of another good one there. MMH is previous month end. So there are a lot of little tricks like that if you get used to it, that again, just save a couple of seconds on every transaction. It actually adds up. Oops, sorry. And then search functions, the resizing we talked about, the question marks, again, don't hesitate. It's a great resource. Attachment, what does an attachment mean? Here you go. Here's your thing, and here's your best practices if you kind of want a quick snip on that. And then the last thing that I love about the team at Ethos and the clients that we've worked with is sharing it. You find something that saves you a minute and you share with your team, it's the best feeling, because that's how we find out the little odd things that you never think about that are going to save you a minute here, a minute there, and it really does add up. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to your team members, to your Intacct resources, or to look on the community or look on the help site.
Awesome.
And I didn't stop to ask for questions. I apologize. Any other questions that people might have, or ideas or suggestions to share?
We've been there has been a few questions behind the scenes, but I've been able to answer them. So I think we're actually getting close here. So
Yes.
Sue, great job here. So I know that we went a little bit over in terms of.
I apologize.
but we're good. So no, awesome job, and hopefully everyone's got some of these tips and tricks. One thing that I would say I would end it on is that if there's any types of trainings that, as Sue says, share the ideas and anything like that. If there's any types of trainings that you want from us here at Ethos, obviously today, we do these at no charge. If there's any types of training you want, please let us know at this point here. I'm going to leave the questions open for the next couple minutes here to make sure there's no other questions that come in through. But otherwise, I really want to thank everyone for attending for today. Sue, again, tremendous job. Thank you for spending a lot of time putting this together. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for contributing to it by, participating in our meetings and our chats and our training. This is wonderful. And that's what makes it fun and exciting to come to work every day. So you're all very much appreciated.
Awesome. Have a great one, everyone.
Take care.